It has been said that public image may be shaped by what others see, but integrity is built on what an athlete does when no one is watching. For collegiate athletes, true success lies not just in performance, but in upholding character both on and off the field. Let's talk about public image and integrity on today's episode of the Playing with a Purpose podcast. All right, welcome to the Playing with a Purpose podcast, where we explore topics related to the moral development of collegiate athletes and young people as it pertains to character, responsibility, and purpose. I'm your host, Matt Barker, and today I'm excited to have one of my good friends, former professors, and current colleague, Dr. Janine Dunlap. I have a lot of titles for you there, Dr. Dunlap.
Yes, you did.
And it's great to have you on the program. Welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So I know a lot about you just because I had you as a professor in class back in early 2000s when I was in school here at Freed-Hardeman, and I've known you for quite a while after that point just by working here at Freed-Hardeman for the last 6 or 7 years in the communication department. We're both professors of communication. But for our listeners, give us a little bit of background about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your career, family, all that good stuff.
I attended Freed-Hardeman back in the 80s and graduated from here with a bachelor's degree in public relations. Then I went on to Ole Miss and got a master's degree in journalism, returned here to teach, and then eventually pursued my PhD in mass communication and mass media. I've worked here for, I think this is my 38th year of teaching here, and I teach public relations, journalism, communication law. I have raised, along with my husband of almost 40 years, 2 boys, one of whom was a college athlete here. So
I ran cross country,
ran cross country and track, and I'm very familiar with what athletes go through, having not only taught them, but also having raised one. So,
and you're also a big University of Tennessee
very
Vols
huge
fan.
University
and
of
you
Tennessee
see a lot
football
of,
fan.
Just in general, the athletes, especially NCAA athletes, how they carry themselves and things they do well, things they do not do well.
Yeah.
From a public relations standpoint, you probably see some negative things they do as well as maybe some positive. So
all the time.
We'll get into some of those things today as well. And specifically some of the things you mentioned you teach, communication law, but also one of the classes you're teaching this semester is crisis communication.
Yes.
And we'll get into a little bit of that a little bit later about when things don't go exactly as planned. How do you remedy that, and what are some things you can do to maybe fix these situations? So we'll get into your insight on that here in just a little bit. And we talk a lot about collegiate athletes on this podcast, but really it's just young people in general. Mm-hmm. Athletes are just young people. You know, they're just happen to play a sport. So a lot of the things that you'll mention will relate to not only collegiate athletes, but also young people as well. Yeah. First thing I wanted to ask you is, how do you define the concept of public image for collegiate athletes, and maybe why is that more important even so today in the media-driven world? We have social media and all these different things. So how would you define that?
Well, I mean, I think you have to remember that public image for anyone is based on perception, but it's also based on your reputation over time, and especially for an athlete, they build that reputation over time based on their actions, their behavior, and their presence on and off the field.
Yeah.
Now, way back when, a former professional tennis player said, image is everything.
Right.
And he would be right, especially in today's 24/7 media world where you're always visible, you're always being scrutinized. Everything you do is played out in a 24/7 media circus.
Yeah.
So that impacts not only the opportunities you get, but also your own personal brand.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is hopefully build a lasting brand or a lasting image that can help you later on. For instance, you know, if you want to be a coach one day, if you want to be a broadcaster, if you want to work in sports information, these are things that you need to think about even in the very beginning of your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And it used to be where athletes were seen a lot and perceived in ways based on when maybe they had a post-game interview.
Yes.
And now with cell phones and everything, their actions are always being recorded.
Yes.
And that can get out on social media. So there's a lot more that they have to deal with, maybe so than 20 years ago even, with athletes where they were perceived in the way that they maybe had a little bit more control over it,
Yes.
because they can control how they behave in a press conference, but they can't always control what they're doing on their own time. And sometimes that is what people see. And then sometimes those negative perceptions come from, is those things that you see off the field, like you were talking about.
Yes.
It's interesting because it's just so much more of that now than
Yes.
there ever has been. So
And another thing that an athlete has to look to is how do they project their image on their own social media.
yeah.
And what they say matters, whether or not you and I like it. But that is the world we live in, where everything you say, every action you take, every word you say can be scrutinized and can be brought up years later.
Right. Never gone for good, for sure. Yeah. And so we talk a lot about it on this podcast about character development. And part of that is just knowing your core values.
Yes.
And the NAI has some core values that they want their athletes to adhere to. And there's just kind of makes up who you are: honesty, respect, responsibility, all those different things. But how can athletes balance maybe that pressure to maintain a perfect public image and still stay true to those core values and have that integrity that they need to?
I think one of the things you have to understand is that the only person to have a perfect public image was Jesus,
Right.
2,000 years ago. And even then, a lot of people didn't like the way he did things.
Yeah.
So I think what you have to hope for, as far as your image, is that you will project, like you had mentioned, project something that is consistent with your core values.
Yeah.
You've got to know those at the beginning. One of the things, balancing that perfect image versus everything else that's going on around you, most universities in their athletic programs have media training.
Yeah.
And that media training will teach you about, just because you can say something doesn't mean you should
Yeah.
on social media, because it will follow you. So I think part of it is just realizing that no matter what you do and no matter how you do it, somebody is going to take issue with it.
Yeah.
And you have to, like you said, stay true to your core values. Like you said, the NAIA has the core values that they subscribe to. And for the most part, those are values that everybody looks to.
Regardless if you're an athlete or not, you need to have
Yes.
those. Yeah. And one of the things that not only knowing what those core values are, but one of the things I looked up and thought was interesting was instructing athletes to set boundaries on social media, like limiting maybe
Yes.
what you choose to share, what you choose to do. And that can help your image because you're not just sharing everything.
Well, and one of the things I think that a lot of athletes, I think a lot of people just need to do this as well, but
Yeah.
especially athletes, is don't post immediately after a game.
Yeah.
Because
you're fired
usually
up.
you're fired up. You've either won, you've lost, whatever. But one of the things that you will find is your emotions will come out in those posts. And what you want to do is present I call it a reasoned reaction. But also, you also don't need to read social media immediately before or immediately
Yeah.
after a contest, because it's going to hurt your feelings. It
Yeah.
can't not hurt your feelings. I admire athletes who say, I'm off social media for right now.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to take a break.
Yeah. And it kind of leads us to the next question on how does social media platforms complicate the way collegiate athletes manage their public image? So, I mean, like you said, this is something that it's probably almost better to not be on these, especially before or after an event. But what are some ways that maybe social media complicates the way that athletes are trying to portray this image, but then they also have this big thing called social media that's in their way as well?
Well, and I mean, I think on social media, you can on social media, you can look like you're perfect or you cannot.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's all a matter, like we talked about, of perception. And because of its 24/7 nature, it's never off. You are constantly bombarded with comments and sometimes compliments and sometimes criticisms, and also just people that don't understand what they're talking about.
Right.
So you have to become more perceptive and more discerning in what you're looking at.
Yeah. And I think a big part of this, well, we've talked about this a little bit already, but it's this role that coaches and mentors play as well. So it's not just the athletes maybe managing. You mentioned media training, and sometimes it's bringing in other professionals or mentors to help them. Maybe someone like yourself, Janine, who's a big public relations person, would be somebody good for them to talk to. But maybe how can coaches, mentors, and just athletic programs in general help athletes build this positive public image and maybe be intentional about it?
I think that's your key word. Be intentional. Address it. Coaches, mentors, others need to address this head on. A lot of D1 schools have media training for all their athletes. So if they're ever interviewed, then they give them talking points and different things that they can deal with.
Yeah.
In our case, while we may not have a lot of that going on, having the coaches address things like, what are our policies of conduct for social media use? What can you post? What would we rather you not post?
Right.
And make them understand that social media is projecting not only an image for the athlete, but an image for the university that they're representing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Most athletes really look up to their coaches and want to, please their coaches. So I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Is because they have an influence that lasts a lifetime on the players they come in contact with.
Yeah. How much credit do athletes should they get for just owning up to it as well? We talk about how you respond to your public image. Just if there's a mistake that's made, how big is it just to own up to it and apologize instead of trying to cover it up?
To me, it's huge.
Yeah.
We, instead of trying to pass the buck or blame someone else, part of being a mature adult and part of understanding what being a responsible adult is that you own your mistakes, whether it's on the field or off the field, that you come and say, I did that. Now, the tricky part is the apology, because you don't want to make an apology that doesn't sound sincere.
Yeah.
You want to make a heartfelt apology that truly addresses the behavior, but then also says, here's what I'm going to do to not have that happen in the future.
Yeah.
I'm going to not post immediately after a game. I'm going to take a hiatus from social media. I'm going to have some media training. Anything that you can say positive that shows, I recognize this is a problem and I'm going to do these things to fix it.
Yeah, and that this goes back to that crisis communication aspect of the classes that you teach. This isn't just true for athletes, but organizations could follow the same advice.
Huge, yes. We just, in class, just finished a section on what makes an effective apology, and we went at it from an organization but also an individual standpoint and identified ones that definitely were not sincere.
Right.
And then others that really worked in the favor of the person.
Absolutely, yeah. So what advice would you give to athletes about handling those expectations? They have to deal with not only their own team, their coaches and things like that, but they have to deal with the fans. That's a big one, especially with bigger programs. They have all these fans that come to their games. They watch them every move they're making. The media, just the university, you talked about adhering to those policies that the university has. How do they do that while staying grounded in their personal values as well? That's a complicated one.
Well, knowing what your personal values are, what you value more than anything, will help ground you in the future. The next thing you do, surround yourself with good people. If you have a situation you're not sure how to handle it, go to that coach, go to that mentor and say, look, I'm struggling here, need help with how do I deal with all of this. I was reading the other day, Caitlin Clark talked about when she was at the University of Iowa, talked about all the scrutiny that she was under, and the question was asked, how do you handle that kind of pressure? And she said, I just remember who I am, and I know who I want to be and how I want to be perceived.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing for students, but also for student athletes is, what do you want? You're building, like I said in the beginning, a lasting legacy.
Yeah, a brand.
A brand. It's your personal brand. What do you want that brand to look like? And once you have figured that out, reflects that you're thinking long-term rather than just immediate short-term. That's the thing about social media. It gives you the impression that it's extremely short-term, just, snippets.
Put it out there and it's
put
gone.
it out there and it's gone. And it doesn't go away. It's one of those things that can either come back to help you or come back to haunt you.
Yeah, and a lot of times the people that you mentioned, not just surrounding yourself with people, but surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yes.
We can all have a lot of people around us, but they're not always going to be the best influence. And you see stories all the time about, especially when you get to like the NFL draft or NBA draft, there'll be things that come out from social media that was posted years ago, and it impacts their stock in the draft, because it's like, do we want a guy that has no control over what they're posting on social media? And even just the idea of just not really being aware of what is posted can be a negative thing for organizations to look at. And so not just surrounding yourself with people, but the right people that are going to help you, mentor you, and help you get to kind of what we're going to talk about next, this idea of integrity.
Yes.
You surround yourself with people that have integrity, you're going to have more integrity in the process because they're going to be looking out for your best interests and not just trying to have fun all the time either. So it kind of goes into this concept of integrity, the influence in athletes' decision-making, both on and off the field, especially when they know they're being watched. What role does this concept of integrity play in that?
In your quote at the beginning, it talked about integrity being something that happens when no one's looking.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to remember. And when you're under scrutiny, like these athletes are, you got to make sure that you stay the same person.
Yeah.
And be true to what you know to be. If you value honesty above all else, then that needs to be your mantra when dealing with the media or anyone else.
Yeah.
So I think part of what happens is that athletes get in the rut of thinking, oh, I'm so great, and, everybody's looking at me, and that's fine when they're winning.
Yeah.
But then say they lose or they are injured or something like that. Well, people are still watching.
Yeah.
But the athlete likes to think, no, they're not.
Yeah.
And it's really what you are doing when no one else is watching. There's an example of this, and I will butcher his last name, so I will just use Tua.
Tagovailoa, yeah. I think I got it right. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm glad
Nobody
you did.
ever knows if they get that right
I
or
know.
not.
He was used as an example in a couple of things that I was reading, talked about how he mentors younger players.
Yeah.
And he doesn't make a big deal about it. He doesn't go out of his way, but they know that he is a mature influence there with them. Same thing with Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
One of the things that you've got to understand is a lot of times just doing the right thing, doing the thing that you know is right, influences others around you.
Yeah.
And sticking to that helps.
Yeah. And you mentioned Tim Tebow. He's the one, the next question I was going to ask you, I really think of him when I thought of this question. Our culture, we focus a lot on wins, losses, how much success are we having. A lot of times you determine how successful your season was based on how many wins did we have? How many losses did we have? Did we get to this certain level that we wanted to achieve? Did we get to the national tournament? Did we get to the final however many teams in the college football playoff? That is how a lot of people determine success. You have players like Tim Tebow. Sounds like Tua's kind of the same way, but Tim Tebow has kind of made a career on this. His faith is a big part of his life.
Yes.
His integrity, these different core values that you have to adhere to, he really focuses on that in his public speaking engagements. How do athletes balance having this integrity and wanting to speak out on those things while also competing with this idea we have to win, we have to win games, and that's society we live in. They want wins and losses or success.
And I think what you're talking about a lot in this is sportsmanship. Are you a gracious winner? Are you a gracious loser?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes. Society requires that there be a benchmark, and for a lot of athletes, that's success, wins, losses, or fame and money. How much money did you make this year? That kind of thing. And in the age of NIL, especially for college athletes, that becomes even more of a pressure point.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would think that coaches would want their athletes to focus on is your actions send messages. Whether they're positive or negative is up to you. Now, the fame and success thing, you can't control how society is going to look at you. But what you can control is your reaction to that.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of like J.J. Watt with his help after Hurricane Harvey in Texas and his continued focus on helping young people in character building activities and in sport is so important. They've taken their platform and they've used it for good. Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about kind of the negative side, I think, and rightfully so. In social media, there is a lot of negatives associated with that. But there can be some positives to having that platform. Like we talked about, you can share your faith. You can share these different aspects of integrity, sportsmanship. So how can collegiate athletes use their platform? Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's just being in the public eye in general to positively influence their peers, younger generations that are watching them and maybe fans that are watching them and still stay true to those values and have that positive image? And how can they use social media maybe to be a positive thing?
Well, be intentional with it.
Yeah.
If you are going to volunteer to read at a school, be intentional with what you're doing. Understand that you're leading by example. If you are in the public eye, whether you like it or not, you're leading by example.
Right.
And you want that example to be a positive one. Volunteer. Be out there. Do things other than just be known for, I play a sport.
Yeah.
Try to get involved in your community in whatever way you choose to. And as far as using your platform on social media and otherwise, social media can be used for good. You can use it to encourage others. If you do nothing more than post an encouraging quote every day, you're still ahead of a lot of what these other trolls are doing online.
Yeah. And Jonathan Estes, when I had him on, mentioned the same thing too. He said early on in his coaching career, he focused a lot on wins and losses, and his teams didn't do as well. He said when we started focusing on how do you be a better teammate to those around you, how do you focus on some of these things outside the wins and losses, he's like, I wasn't necessarily doing that so we could win more. He said I was doing it because it's something we needed to do, but he's like, we did win more. It's like it did transpire into this better winning seasons because people were playing together better. They were using those skills they had to benefit others. So there is this aspect of it needs a combination of both. You can't just have just the athletic ability without that character component. You're going to be mainly looking out for yourself and not for your teammates. Those core values are definitely important. Honesty, respect, all those things. Yeah. So we talked about positive ways, negative things about it. But if an athlete, say they have a lapse in judgment, maybe they do something that's negative, again, going back to this crisis communication, maybe they haven't used social media in the best way possible. How can an athlete recover maybe from a lapse in public image or integrity? And maybe what steps can they take to rebuild that trust with fans, teammates, and maybe just the overall athletic department?
I think for a lot of athletes, it's not going to be if this happens to them, it's going to be when.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I mentioned before was apologize.
Yeah.
Make your actions speak louder than your words. If you've had a huge, if you made a mistake, then, like I said, remedy the mistake. Say, I'm going to be doing these things to remedy that.
Yeah.
If it was an angry outburst or whatever it was, I'm going to have anger management training, whatever like that. Go to the coach. Go to your teammates. Apologize to them. Tell them you want them to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
And to help you to overcome this. I don't think you can't hide from it. It's not going to go away. And yes, those tweets and other posts are always going to be there and screenshots of them. So you can't ignore it. But acknowledging it head on and being transparent is huge.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the best things that you can do.
Yeah, and it might be an opportunity you can help others in the future. Like, hey, I made these mistakes when I was posting, helping some younger athletes with that, and maybe helping the younger generation don't make the same mistake I did. And in a way, you're benefiting everyone in the process because they're learning from the mistakes you made as well as you are as well.
Right.
So definitely a lot of good thoughts here. Anything else that you want to add? Anything that you maybe thought about talking about but didn't get to?
One of the things, I guess, is just to try to handle adversity and criticism, because everybody's an expert these days,
Right.
with a level of maturity. If you read something, if something is posted on your wall, if somebody sends you a message or something, and it's really inflammatory, do not respond immediately.
Yeah.
Give it time.
Yeah. Think it through.
Think it through before you do anything. Because a lot of times we have knee-jerk reactions to different things. A situation you and I had talked about before was the Charles Barkley quote in 1993, I am not a role model. When I went out and I looked that up, and one of the interesting thing was I don't think I had ever heard the entire quote.
Yeah, I don't think I have either.
He said, I'm not a role model. I'm not paid to be a role model. I'm paid to wreak havoc on the basketball court. Parents should be role models. Just because I dunk a basketball doesn't mean I should raise your kids. This basically equates to any athlete today saying, all I do is play a sport. You shouldn't use me as a role model. The problem is if you're in the spotlight, like a lot of these athletes are, I hate to tell you, you're already a role model. But what he wanted to get across is the idea that use the people that are immediately around you. You may admire what he does on a basketball, what he did on a basketball course or in the broadcast booth. But when push comes to shove, the people that you need to really use as role models are the people that are around you.
That know you.
That know you and know what you're capable of.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. All right. Well, Dr. Dunlap, I call her Janine normally, and she just calls me Matt.
Matt.
And this is kind of interesting too,
Matty
because
B.
I had Janine in class, so it was always one of my favorite teachers. Always has a lot of great insight on a lot of this that we talked about with public image and integrity. Well, thanks for joining us for this week's episode of the Playing with a Purpose podcast. Special thanks again to Dr. Dunlap for being my guest this week. Be sure to check out this episode and future episodes on Spotify or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also catch the Playing with a Purpose podcast on the Ministry League Podcast Network, the Freed-Hardeman Athletics Champions of Character website at gofhulions.com/champions of character, and the NAIA Champions of Character website at naia.org/champions of character. And join us for our next episode as I talk with FHU business instructor Amy Sewell on the topic of time management. And remember, winning isn't just about the scoreboard, it's about the character we build along the way. We'll see you next time on the Playing with a Purpose podcast.